This is a Mercedes Benz A45 AMG, Mercedes answer to the RS3, which coincidentally we have sitting just over there. Now if you're planning on buying one of these, stick around because we're going to cover all the common problems, show you all the things that tend to go wrong, so you can go out there and buy the very best car possible. Now let's go. So let's kick off at the business end. Now there wasn't really any option when it came to the engine on these. You only had one, and it was the 2 litre inline 4 that we've got here. Now thankfully it was a good one. You didn't really need any other options. When the cars came out in 2013, it was 360 brake horsepower. Now moving on from that, the 2016 facelift seen the power raised to 381 brake horsepower, which was just a little bit more than the RS3 that had just came out. So as good as these engines were, what tended to go wrong then? Well, number one was a problem with the oil feed to the turbo. It only applies to cars that were built on or before March 2014. The problem was Mercedes didn't fit any surge protection to that oil feed, and it could result in turbo damage, obviously very expensive to rectify. Good news, however, they did issue a recall and all of those cars should have been taken care of. Now I say should. We want to see some paperwork or documentation showing that that work was carried out so it doesn't come out of your pocket. Next up, as these cars get a little bit older, something that we're seeing more and more commonly is the crankshaft position sensor. Now it's a wee bit hard to try and explain the symptoms standing here stood still, so we'll talk about that a wee bit more once we get out on that test drive, so hang around for that. So interior wise, get a good look at these seats. They're obviously very tightly bolstered. Great seats, by the way. However, anywhere that we've got that kind of human car interaction, it tends to speed up the wear process. So get a good look at the bolsters. Make sure nothing looks too tatty. And also, you could get these all leather or you could get part leather, part cloth. Just be aware that the cloth tends to hold stains really bad. So if you've got kids or dogs or anything like that, the all leather might be a better option. Also check that if it's got cloth, it's not too tatty either. So hopping into this, still really awesome, really fresh interior. There are a few things we want to check. There's one thing in particular, don't miss this. But before we do, if I may, I want to ask a quick favour of you guys. If you're getting value from this video, please go ahead and hit the like button. We really appreciate that, and it helps other prospective buyers find these videos as well. And also, we create these buyer's guides for literally every type of car, so it might be a worthwhile subscribe for you as well. I'll leave that one up to you. Nevertheless, that problem I'm talking about is to do with the air conditioner. Now the issue there is actually the O-rings on the air conditioner compressor, but it doesn't really matter. It ultimately ends up with the air conditioner not working correctly. So when we get out on that test drive, make sure we've got that air conditioning turned on. Now on note of the air conditioner, here's something you can try before we get out on that test drive, and that is sometimes the actual blowers can have a problem as well. Now thankfully, I'll let you into a wee secret here, it tends to be a bad resistor, maybe a fuse, something like that, quite a simple fix, but that's the risk that you take. If you find it's not working, it could be something a bit more substantial, like the blower motor itself. So obviously, bring that into the negotiation with the seller, try and save yourself a little bit of money back. Also, this is a trivial thing, but these can also tend to rattle sometimes. Make sure it's not the case. And oh, while I've got you on this take, double check this as well, particularly if it's a pre-facelift car. Double check that there's no dampness in the rear footwells, because the drains in the back can get blocked, and that's where the water tends to accumulate. So let's get onto that elephant in the room. I know you will have noticed this if you've been doing any research on the car yourselves, and that is that the gearbox can tend to give problems. Now right away I'd like to try and debunk a couple of myths around this. Number one, if you have been looking around, you may be led to believe that every single gearbox has had problems. It's not the case. It's actually a relatively small amount of them that have experienced problems. Plenty of cars out there still on their original gearbox, just like this one, and have absolutely no problems. So don't be led to believe that every car is to be scared of. Number two is that I have seen around, people seem to believe that it's only the pre-facelift cars that have problems. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Pre-facelift and facelift cars can both suffer the gearbox problems. So what do we actually need to check? What are we looking for when we view a car? Well, let me tell you the first thing you need to do, and that is speak to the seller, arrange with them that you can view the car when it's completely stone cold. In other words, the car hasn't been started that day. We get to start it fresh, and then this is what you want to do. When you get in the car, we're going to start it, and we're going to try putting it directly into reverse. If you can do that while the high idle is still on, even better. Put it into reverse, put it into drive, put it back to park. What we're listening out for is a distinct crunching noise coming from the gearbox. You're not going to miss it. Now, here's the interesting part. It doesn't always do it the first time you select reverse or drive, so do it again for a second time. You could even tell the seller what you're doing here, just to double check, because more often than not, if it is a problem, it's going to do it the second time you select reverse or drive. Now, if you hear a crunch, you know that gearbox isn't going to last very long. So there are a few more symptoms, but again, it's easier to tell you about them on the road, so let's go. So here we are on the test drive. I can't stress that enough, by the way. Make sure you get a good test drive in the car. Make sure you're able to check all these things. We definitely don't want to go buying something and then discovering things on the journey home. So let's get moving, and I'll tell you just exactly what you're looking for here. So something we spoke about back at the garage was that camshaft sensor. Now the best way of spotting that is getting the car out on a drive and give it a bit of beans. And you can see just how responsive this car is when you hit that throttle pedal. That's the way the one that you're viewing should be as well. Any kind of delay, or if it feels like the car's slightly holding back, that seems to be the symptoms that are associated with that camshaft sensor. So double check that. Next up, you'll notice here we've got the screen going, the MMI screen. Now that's important too. Make sure you do the same thing. The reason that we've got that on is there is a few reports of this screen randomly rebooting or just going black altogether. And obviously that's going to require repair. It's going to come out of your pocket if you don't notice it now. So have that screen on and doing something. We've obviously got the sat nav running, which is absolutely fine. That's adequate. Now the last thing I want to mention here is obviously on that gearbox front. I told you the checks back at the garage. Go into drive, go into reverse, back into park, and repeat that twice. Now out on the road, I'll try and show you what I mean by it here. You can see just as I'm on this throttle, the gearbox is super slick. Now obviously that's just a second to third gear change, but it's like that in every gear, believe me. So make sure you get through each of those gears at least a couple of times. Make sure there's no hesitancy, make sure there's no grinding, nothing like that. And just basically, you want it to feel just like this car does. Super smooth, super responsive, and you get that lovely little pop on the downshift. So the A45 then, a formidable hot hatch and a genuine alternative in a world full of S3s and RS3s. So should you buy one? Yes, you should. However, just be aware of those gearbox issues. If you get a good one, chances are you won't have any problems. Get a bad one and things are going to get expensive real fast. So, all things considered, we award it a really rather respectable 7.5 out of 10 on our reliability leaderboard. Now thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next video.